Anyone can set up a photographic studio. All you need is a bit of space, indoor space, a light, a camera, and some way to modify that light. Now, you don't need an artificial light if you have a window light. Window light studios can work perfectly well. In the Southern Hemisphere, it's good to have a south-facing window because the sun never gets through that window from the south. In the Northern Hemisphere, you want a north-facing window because your sun will never get into the northern part of the sky in the Northern Hemisphere. So that's what you would look for. Now, you could hire a studio if you want, but it's much better if you can have somewhere that you can set up on your own. It's less expensive, obviously, and you feel a bit more comfortable in your own space. Now, when I first started out in portrait photography and studio photography, I started out with a $10 flash and the lid of a washing machine. That's all I had. I reflected the flash off the washing machine lid to soften the light back onto my subject. And it worked really well. I had to hold the washing machine lid up. I didn't have a light stand to hold it, but it worked well. If you've got a white wall, you can bounce some light off a white wall and get some beautiful soft light on your subject. You've seen a lot of the videos that I've done over the years have been with minimal equipment. You don't need very much. A desk lamp you can do beautiful studio portraits with. So since that washing machine lid, I've set up many studios. We rent our houses, so we need to move every now and again. Every 2 or 3 years we move to a new premises. So I've set up studios in multiple different places. I had a high street studio at one stage where I had a Main Street facade and I had a studio there for 10 years. But ever since I've moved my business back home, I've set up multiple different studios in different spaces. So I've learned a lot about economically setting up a studio to give you the best results. I'm going to show you all that today in this video. So it's a matter of just setting up the space that you have and using what you've got. Now, I'm in a garage. My studio is set up in a garage. The space is not really huge. It's about 20 feet by 15 feet, 6 meters by 5 meters in the old measurements or the new measurements. I want to try and maximize the possibilities within this space as much as possible. So I've got backgrounds all around the walls. I try and use as much wall space as I can for my backgrounds. And I'm going to show you some of the ways that I've put multiple backgrounds on multiple walls to try and get as much variety as I can. Because when I'm shooting my clients, I want to get as much variety as I possibly can so that I sell more images, so that they will buy more images because there's more variety in the results. So I mentioned that the studio space, the shooting space here is not huge. It's about a double garage size. So if you've got a garage you can fit 2 cars in, you can do the same thing that I've got here. Now, a couple of the important things about setting up your studio in a room. If you can find a room that's got white walls, it's a big bonus because that white wall gives you a background straight away. You don't have to purchase anything else. I've got brick walls in my studio which don't look particularly great, so I've needed to use those walls and cover them with various different materials to give my backgrounds. Another important thing about a studio space is try to get something with a solid floor, either floorboards or concrete, because if you've got carpet, it can be a problem. If you've got a background laid out on the floor, down the wall and out the floor, heels can go through that background or can crease that background. I have had studio spaces before with carpet on the floor and all I've done is lay a bit of plywood, a bit of thin plywood or melamine on the floor and put the background on top of that, and it worked okay. But a hard floor is ideal. The second thing, and a bit more important, is the ceiling height. To have a high ceiling gives you so much more room for lifting your lights up higher. Having a 9-foot ceiling or a 3-meter ceiling is not going to hinder you if you work out the way that you can use it. But having a higher ceiling, I've got 4-meter ceilings in here, just by luck than management, and that allows me to get a lot of stuff up high and allows me to use those downward light angles if I need to. So a high ceiling is a good idea as well. One other thing is the ambient light in your room. If you've got fluorescent tubes or you've got downlights or some sort of lighting in your room, try to have it balanced for daylight. The tubes I've got in my fluorescent lights here are 5,000 degrees Kelvin, so they give me white light. So particularly if I'm videoing, I don't have to do much worrying with my white balance. But use whatever you can, and I'm sure it'll work out fine. Now, I'm going to run through some of these backgrounds that I've got. A lot of these walls I've got multiple backgrounds on, so I've used the different backgrounds in the same space. You can see here I've got my seamless rolls up on the wall here. They're just fixed into the wall. I can roll down my white one, my black one, or my grey one. They're the three colours that I use. I don't use any other colours because I can always throw coloured light onto those backgrounds to give me the light that I need, the coloured light in the background. So grey is probably the best one. If you can only afford one background, grey is probably the best because you can light it, overlight it to get white, and you can underlight it to get black. I've also got some of these blinds here, just roll down blinds I bought from the hardware store. They were on special, so they tuck away up under my seamless, and it gives me another option for a background with a little bit more texture in it. I've got a light coloured one and a dark coloured one. They're quite wide. I think they're about 3 metres, close to 3 metres. So they do a good job, and it's much quicker than pulling my seamless down and rolling it back up again. Over here in the corner, I've got a piece of faux fur, a bit of artificial fur that is great for my glamour and my boudoir portraits. I've got white as well as this grey one, and they're terrific because they give you that feeling of warmth and comfort, and it's a very boudoir-y sort of a background, which isn't really a word, but you know what I mean. So that helps me a lot. I can take that off. That's just clamped to a timber batten that's along the wall there. I just can take that off and I can lay it on the floor if I need to. So it's versatile. I can use it vertically, or I can use it horizontally. Now here I've got my large background. This is a 6 metre wide background. It's cotton. It's printed with this grey pattern. It's 6 metres by 3 metres. So it allows me to shoot large family groups or large sets in front of it here. I've got it attached to a structure at the top, like a truss that I've made up out of timber, and it's just clipped on with clips, with clamps, and I make sure that it's wrinkle free. It comes straight down. I can pull it up or down with pulleys that are attached to the bearers up above. So the pulley arrangement just means I can grab a rope on each end and pull it down or pull it back up again, and it works a treat. Plus I can put all my rubbish in behind here. I can store stuff in behind there. All of my son's stuff and my daughter's stuff that I don't want showing goes in behind the backdrop. And this, by the way, is where my roller doors are for my garage. So if I want to get a car in or I want to move something in, I can just lift that background up and I can open the doors and get stuff in. Over here, we've got another couple of backgrounds. These are just waist up or hips up backgrounds because they don't go right to the ground. Just a plain Venetian blind, just a very cheap one that I can roll down or roll up if I need to. Again, it's simply attached to a batten that's screwed into the wall, to the bricks. And I've got another roll down backdrop here that's got a little bit more texture on it that I can pull down. This one will go right to the floor, and that just gives me another option. This space here was a little bit difficult because it's only very narrow, so I had to try and find some background options that were going to fit in this space. So luckily, I found 1200mm wide blinds that again can pull up or down. I can pull these ones down, back up again, and in behind here, I've simply got a white piece of foam core that I can use as a white wall in here. I can pose my clients up against it because there's nowhere else in the studio that I've got a solid wall that I can actually pose people up against. So it works really well as well. Over on this wall, I've got a drop-down paper background that again goes right to the floor if I need to. It's corrugated, so it gives a sort of a different texture than a lot of other backgrounds that I have. And of course, I've got another one of those drop-down blinds that I can use with a different texture again. Now underneath this background, I have my whiteboard. So this is where I explain apertures and shutter speeds to all of my students when I'm teaching photography in this space. Here I have a couple of sheer curtains, just on an old curtain rod, again, tied up to the ceiling so I can pull it up or pull it down at will. I've got a couple of curtains here because it just looks a little bit better to be a little bit more solid. I can put a light in behind here and light through for my boudoir or my glamour portraits, or I can use it as a light source. If I've got somebody over on the seamless background, I can put a light in behind here and use those curtains to soften that light. There's a number of different ways I can use these curtains. I can have my clients in close here and just have them lit this way. It gives a softer sort of a feel to the image. So that can be a real big bonus. And I think it cost me about $10 for both of these curtains. Now in behind those curtains, I've got my timber backdrop. This was an area when we moved into the house, it was an old workshop. And I wondered how I could use it to best advantage. It looked very rustic. So I found out that the fellow next door neighbour, was pulling down his back fence. So I asked him if I could have all the old palings off his fence, and I created this backdrop out of the old fence palings, put it on top of there's a timber frame in the background there. It's quite flimsy, but it's strong enough to withstand a little bit of leaning on. And just put a few extra things around. I use it to store my light modifiers here sometimes as well. As you know, this is where I do a lot of my YouTube videos. I've had this sort of backdrop at a few of the studios that I've been in. It just tends to fit in a corner quite nicely. You just need to put up some battens on the wall and then nail or screw the palings onto it. Cost me next to nothing, but it looks really good. It looks really rustic. And it's a very popular background with my clients. This is the change room area where my clients and my models come to get changed. It's quite private. We've got thick curtains all the way around. They can close off the front. In behind these curtains is my storage. I've got cupboards all behind all of these curtains that hold all of my props and a few backdrops, a few lights, various different things that you accumulate in a photographic studio. We've got a clothing rack here that they can put their clothes on. We've got a couple of mirrors in here. Usually I have an extra one, just so that clients can see what they look like from front and back and make sure that they're looking good and feeling confident when they come out to be photographed. I've got some carpet on the floor here, just a large carpet square, and it helps it to feel a little bit more homely, a little bit more warm, a bit more inviting than just having the concrete floor. I mentioned to you before about it's a good idea not having carpet on the floor of your studio. I've put this piece of carpet down here. This was all concrete on the floor. It was a little bit messy from years and years of cars dropping oil on it. But the reason why I've got the carpet here is just because it makes it feel more warm and inviting. The concrete floor was very harsh. It made the room very echoey. It's still got a bit of an echo in it, but the carpet just made such a big difference to how luxurious it feels, how homely it feels, and how warm it feels. You'll notice that I've had to cut out a little section in that carpet square so that my seamless backgrounds can come down and stretch out as far as they need to. I didn't want them on the carpet, but the carpet is really good. I can roll it up at any time that I don't want it, particularly if I'm using water or something in the studio that I don't want the carpet to get wet. I can just roll it up and shoot on the plain floor and there's no problem. A couple of little extra things that you may not think of. One is electrical outlets. The more electrical outlets you've got in your studio, the easier it's going to be for you. I have a few here, but they're in difficult places. So I tend to have extension leads running across the ceiling and down the walls so that the leads are in convenient places for me to plug my lights in. I don't use a lot of mains powered lights in the studio. I tend to use battery lights now because they're more convenient, but the more electrical outlets you have, the better for things like smoke machines or fans or air conditioners, things like that. On the subject of air conditioners, this place is not air conditioned. It's a garage, so you very rarely have air conditioning in a garage. And because we rent, we can't put one in. So it does get very warm in the summer. It's quite warm today. You'll notice I'm sweating a fair bit. This western wall gets sun in the afternoon, so that wall gets quite warm. So on really hot days, it's quite uncomfortable in here. On cool days, it's not quite so bad. I can just put a fan heater on my model to warm her up a little bit. Air conditioning really does make a big difference, but if you don't have it, you don't have it. You don't miss it. One last thing is a bathroom. somewhere that your client can use the bathroom, a washroom, to make it convenient so they don't have to walk through your house or walk around other places. So having a washroom there or a bathroom is a really big convenience as well. That's a quick look around my studio. I'm going to do a couple more of these videos in the near future on the lights that I use. Also, I'll be doing one on the small gadgets and furniture and bits and pieces that make my studio work so much more versatile and make it easier for me to get different, unusual sort of shots in the studio. So keep an eye out for that. So try to set up an indoor space if you can. You don't need a lot of room. I've used 1-bedroom flats before and set up studios, and it works a treat. You just have to work within the confines of what you're given. So give it a try. I'm sure you'll enjoy yourself. You'll learn more about studio portraiture, and your work can look amazingly professional with a minimum of equipment, a minimum of space. If you're interested in the previous studio that I had set up, have a look up here. I'll put a link to that video up here. This is a studio I had before I moved in here. And when we move out of this studio, which we're going to very soon, I'll make a video of the new studio. Setting up the new space. It'll be a totally different type of space, so you'll see how I set that up. That'll be one to look forward to. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.